The 12 bar blues. Basically the chord progression that brings everybody together. Whether you're playing at home by yourself, or you're with a group of friends, or if you go into a local jam, the 12 bar blues is a tried and true chord progression to bust out when you want to jam with your buddies and play some tasty licks and some tasty riffs. It's definitely something that it's really hard to get bored of it, ironically, because it's really, really repetitive, and it's been repetitive pretty much since it was started in 1910 or something. Crazy, kind of genius. But we love the 12 bar blues, and that's what today's lesson is about. And in fact, I'm going to be teaching you how to play the 12 bar blues like the pros do with just one chord shape. Now, when I say play like the pros do, what do I mean exactly? Basically, when you're a professional musician, you're seasoned, you've been playing the game for a long time, been playing with other musicians, you know how to show up to a gig or to a jam or whatever, and to really find your pocket within the band that you're performing with. That's generally what a pro does. As a guitar player, not really stepping on the toes of what anyone else in the band is doing, but finding that one perfect place that the guitar as an instrument sits, and playing it that way. So for example, if you notice in the beginning, wasn't playing a full 12 bar blues, but I was just giving you a quick example of what we're going to be learning today. We're going to be using just one chord shape, like I said. And basically with this chord shape, what it does is it occupies the proper place that a guitar should when you're in a blues combo. So for example, all right, this blues progression we're going to be doing is in the key of C, and it starts with this chord here. So that chord is basically a C7 triad, okay? It's called a triad because it's comprised of 3 notes, okay? And basically it starts right here on the 3rd fret of the A string. That's our root note, our C right there. I use my 2nd finger to play that. 1st finger, we're going to play the 2nd fret on the D string. And then with our 3rd finger, we're going to play the 3rd fret on the G string right below. So it creates this kind of triangular finger pattern, right? Super simple. That shape is literally all you're going to be doing. You don't need to deviate from that shape throughout this entire lesson. You're going to be able to move it around, but keep that shape as if your fingers were stuck like that, right? That'll make it way easier for you. So this C7 triad, the reason why it works really well in a blues combo as a guitar player, especially if you're playing rhythm guitar, is because on one hand, you're not occupying the low C, which is what the bass player would be covering, right? The bass player over a chord progression like this would probably do, a bass line like, of course, much lower and bassier, right? But what the guitar player should be doing while that walking bass line's kind of going, really, really just quick hits using a technique that's called staccato playing, right? Is when you basically just hit it and then hit it and quit it really fast, right? You don't let the notes ring out. You're going. Okay. And basically when you have the bass line going over that, it just completes the combo in a much better way. And then of course, when you have the higher notes, for example, what the keyboard player probably be playing, whatever little things like that. As the guitar player, you're not stepping on the toes of the bass player or the keyboard player, because if you did that, you get very dirty looks, probably not get asked to go back to that jam. Some of the pros are pretty touchy when it comes to that stuff. So this is what I mean by how the pros play it. They just know their place. I think that's what really, is kind of the the tells of a musician of that particular pedigree, you could say, right? So we're going to be going through an entire 12 bar blues lesson, literally just using this triangular finger pattern shape thingy-majiggy, right? And we're starting it, as I showed you before, C7, right? Triad right there starting on the 3rd fret of the A string. And you're only playing those 3 notes, which is on the A string, the D string, and the G string. That's it. Remember, we're playing them staccato, so there are a couple ways that you can immediately mute that chord, right? you can use your picking hand and do kind of a motion like this, where it's like you strum down and then you quickly, almost like there's a magnet in your hand, it's going right back to the bridge, and that'll mute it. Or what I like to do personally is I like to just barely relieve the tension on these fingers. Like instead of fretting them, I'll just kind of relieve them, right? So they're still in position, but they're not pushing down on the strings, and it mutes the strings. So even though my fingers are there, right, it's not going to make any sound. So what I'll do is I'll kind of like hit the chord with the staccato, right? And immediately relax my fingers. And then just, pinch down on them when I'm ready to play that chord again. Okay? Now, you're only really giving this chord a couple stabs, right? Pretty much every measure. And the way it's going to go is because this is following what's called a shuffle beat. Now, all you really got to know if you're unfamiliar with what a shuffle is think about this pattern. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Right? That kind of movement, right? So this chord progression works particularly well when you're playing in a shuffle beat, right? So when we're doing that, because remember what the bass player is playing. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? Like right on the nose shuffle playing right there, right? So what we're going to be doing is, since we're going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, we do the first chord stab on the 1. So if we're doing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? So we're stabbing it on that one beat, right? Now what comes next is what's going to be the and of 2, which means we're going 1 and 2 and. On the and after 2 is when we hit it again. And that, if you're strumming like this, like down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, that and of 2 would be an up. So that first stab on the 1 is a down, and then so it'd be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Just like that, literally repeated pretty much throughout the entire thing, which leaves a lot of room to throw in little rhythmic embellishments if you want to do that. But starting off, it's really simple. Just stab, 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 stab. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And if you want, you can kind of do the Stevie Ray Vaughan approach and then just keep like shuffling, like when you're strumming with the strings as they're muted. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. If it's making you move while you're playing it, that's how you know you're doing it right. Now, the next chord, super simple. Like I said, we're keeping this shape. This shape is not changing one bit throughout this entire lesson, so don't do it. We're going to move this from the 3rd fret here all the way up, boom, to the 8th fret. All right, we're staying on the same strings, the A, D, and the G strings, moving it up to the 8th fret here. That is an F7 triad, okay? So we just moved from C7 to F7. And guess what? We're doing the exact same stabby stab rhythm, right? We're going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then back to C, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Coming up next, those of you who are already pretty familiar with the 12-bar blues, we got to have our 5 chord, right? So that is literally the same shape, but moving up from the 8th fret to the 10th fret here. Starting on the 10th fret of the the low A string, or just the A string, right? relatively simple, you know, but when you really get that rhythm down, get that feeling down, even if you're by yourself, you know, you just really have to have that shuffle beat kind of going in your head, right? Or beating in your chest, you know, that just like boom, 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 down, up, 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. You know, this, obviously I'm using a 12-bar blues as an example, but this chord progression can be used in 8-bar blues. It can be used in all kinds of varieties of your typical 1-4-5 blues progression. Now, if you're not familiar with what I mean by 1-4-5 blues progression, like, don't worry about it too much. It's something that actually is covered in a few of our other videos, which I'll leave a link in the description box below to a video that explains the 1-4-5 chord, chord progression number system, if you want to call it that. And it'll clear that right up for you. So, but if you don't know that, you still can definitely need to learn these chords, and you can definitely apply them whether you know what they're called or not, right? So, and that being said, if you don't know what a 12-bar blues chord progression is, it's basically 12 bars or 12 measures, basically 12 counts of 4, which a 4 count is one measure, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's one measure. 12 of those, and it basically repeats. That's what makes a 12-bar blues progression. So if you already know how to play like a basic 12-bar blues progression, let's say in the key of A, the ever popular key of A, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. You got the shuffle beat going on there too. So this chord progression, even though it's not using the same type of riff, right? And it's in a different key, it still fits that same beat. So the drummer, for example, wouldn't need to change a thing between going from that sort of cowboy shuffle in A, moving on to our pro blues shuffle in C, right? So, and by the way, these chords are what's called moveable shapes, which means you can take that exact same shape and then move it all across the fretboard wherever you need to move the chord to, right? And it doesn't need to necessarily be in the key of C. I like the key of C. It's a popular key when it comes to the blues, you know, but you can do the key of D, you know, starting right here on the 5th fret of the low A string. Or just, why do I keep saying the low A string? The A string. It's only one A string on this guitar, right? So if we're going to be playing in the key of D, we move to our 4 chord, it's going to have to be right here, all the way up to the 10th fret of the A string. And then our 5 chord would be the 12th fret. So you can move it to pretty much any key you want. I like, again, the reason why I like C is not just because it's a popular key with in blues, but it's pretty easy to navigate the fretboard. You know, you cover a nice amount of ground on your fretboard, right? If you go to like the key of E, you know, you're gonna have to, you know, take it even higher. And if you try to do in the key of A, forget about it. I mean, you'd have to obviously lower the octave, but key of C works really well for this, but it's super movable, right? So real quick, let's recap on these chords. This super simple, remember this triangle sort of finger pattern. The C7 triad starts with the middle finger here, 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the A string. 1st finger goes on the 2nd fret of the D string. And then our ring finger, our 3rd finger, goes on the 3rd fret of the G string there to make that entire chord. C7 triad. Then we have our F7 triad. Then we have finally our G7 triad, which is on the 10th fret. And one thing you can do if you need some help, you know, getting into that shuffle beat, it honestly, the best way you can do it that requires the least amount of brain power, right, is just doing this with your picking hand. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. I mean, you don't even need to start it on the strings of your guitar. You can just literally start down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, right? You can keep that going until you really kind of feel it in your bones, you know what I'm saying? And then you can bring it to your strings, and you can even mute the string, just kind of get that rhythm going. And if you want to know, remember where those chord stabs are, right? Remember, it's on the 1 of the 4 count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the second stab is on the and of 2. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? It kind of feels a little weird to count it to yourself, you know, and I feel a little goofy, you know, doing it out loud to you guys. But that's really like a super effective way to get it down. Is like really accent, you know, when you're counting it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And that's how it goes. Really, really simple idea. May not be super easy to pick up at first, but the idea is simple. At this point, all you really need to do is, like I said, get used to that shuffle beat. Really feel that, you know? So when you're playing, even if you're not playing to, of course, when you're practicing, it's super important to practice with a metronome. But if you're not playing with a drummer friend or something, or a drum track, just kind of learn to have that rhythm on your own. You know, so many guitar players forget that, like, we need to be able to hold down rhythm too. In fact, I think that's part of what really makes a guitar player worth their salt, is how well they handle rhythm. But it's just such a simple but fun and like funky chord progression, just to really help you find that rhythm, discover that rhythm within yourself that you don't need a drummer or anybody else for. Get that down first, and then when you are playing it to a drummer, I mean, you'd be surprised how impressive you're going to seem to the other musicians, that the pocket is tight and that you're just in there, you know? So practice this chord progression as like a great starting point. It's a fantastic sort of springboard for you to like get you into playing more funky, more rhythm stuff, because let's be honest, too many people focus on all the wheedly diddly solo stuff, yours truly included. But I gotta say, rhythm is so important that if you forget that, it'll affect your ability to, I mean, really be a real guitar player. You know, if I'm speaking in terms of what the pros would say or what the pros would think, it's really about how a guitar player can hold down his rhythm. So put some time into practicing and really developing that groove. Because if your body is moving along with what you're playing, that's your body's way of telling you that you're in the right groove. And when music moves you, that's what it's all about. Well, that wraps it up for this lesson. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really hope you enjoyed this lesson as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. Be sure to check the description box below. I've left the reference material for this lesson so you can check out the diagrams of all the chord shapes. And on top of that, a link to one of our other videos explaining 12-bar blues and the 1-4-5 chord progression. I've also included in the description box a free download to a blues solo heat map. It'll show you where on your guitar's fretboard you need to play to create those killer, scorching blues solos, right? We learned about how to play rhythm like a pro. This will teach you how to solo like a pro. And if you enjoyed this lesson, be sure to click that subscribe button and click the notification icon so you can stay up to date on all of our new lessons coming out. We put out new lessons every week. Thanks again for tuning to Guitar Mastery Method. I'm Eddie, and I will see you on the next video.